Hi, we're here today with Jakob Boehler from Heidelberg University at one of their tributary monitoring sites to learn more about what goes into monitoring what flows into our Great Lakes.
Yeah.
Hi, Jakob.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, good.
So can you tell us more about what's inside this building and what you measure while you're here?
Yeah, so this is one of our 23 stations that we have as part of the Heidelberg Tributary Loading Program. And so those sites are spread throughout all of Ohio and one in southeast Michigan on the River Raisin.
I'm curious, how old are these site stations? You say you have 23 around Ohio and southeast Michigan, or one in Michigan, but how old are they?
So the stations vary in age. Some of them we've had only going for about 8 or so years, but some of them date back to the original start date of the lab when samples were first taken, would have been 1969. And so that was the Sandusky River primarily, a little bit in the Maumee. And so we actually predate the US EPA, the Clean Water Act, all that type of stuff, like when we started doing this research. And then the Sandusky River and the Maumee River, we count their official start date of part of the Heidelberg Tributary Loading Program as 1974. That's when this more routine sampling started. So we're at 50 years of data on all of those sites. We monitor primarily for nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen, and so we look at different forms, whether it's total forms, dissolved forms, inorganic, organic forms, all that type of stuff, to try to figure out how those nutrients are impacting what's going on in Lake Erie and the rivers too, but primarily out in Lake Erie, the Western Basin, with algal blooms and issues like that. So
that's excellent. That's really important work. You often don't hear of the nutrients being monitored in depth. So when you think of nutrient monitoring, usually they're grab samples, but you have some real-time stuff here too. What's the balance of non-real-time and real-time information?
Okay, yeah, so for our, we do grab samples here as well. And so we do 3 grab samples a day. So we have automated computer program ISCO samplers that will monitor those or collect those 3 samples a day for us. And then during normal flow conditions, like now it's been fairly dry, we only actually analyze, one a day. And then when we have storm events, we actually analyze all 3 samples a day.
Cool.
And so that's where we really see those peak nutrient flows and stuff happening. Where the telemetry stuff comes in, remote access things like exosondes, that gives us some other parameters that we hadn't looked at for a very long time. So this is dissolved oxygen, turbidity, conductivity, pH. This one actually has a nitrate LED sensor on it, so it does nitrate. And so we're kind of compare that to our numbers that we get in the lab to see if the sensors are working like we think they should and that sort of thing, and get an idea if it's something that we can actually deploy. Phosphorus, there isn't really a really high quality sensor out there for those, and so that's one that we're working on, hopefully maybe get one someday, but that's why we still have to collect those samples the way that we are. So this is the ISCO sampler for the grab samples. So there's a computer up here that you can program to take samples really at whatever frequency you want. You can actually set these up to be flow-based too, or precipitation-based, where you can use them for event-style sampling. We do ours so routine at all of these sites, we want to keep them pretty much the same. So we do 3 samples a day. So at noon, 8, and 4 in the morning, there's 20-something of these going or off around the state of Ohio that are collecting a sample for us. And so it'll fill up the bottles. There's a distributor arm in here that moves around to each bottle, and then it fills it up. We actually only collect about 600 mils a sample because that's what we need to analyze stuff, and it just makes the field work part of lugging them around a little bit easier. So.
And is this year-round, or is it just during the summer and spring?
Yeah, so this is year-round, unless something happens to the pump when we don't get water in the building here. This is year-round, 365 days a year. So it's a lot of work to keep those maintained and stuff. We run into issues and stuff periodically, but for the most part, it's fairly routine. We have a backup battery here, and then it's plugged into the wall. So we have just the extra added bonus there of making sure we don't lose sample count that way. This is the XO2 sensor, or logger. This is the only one that we have that's an XO2. We usually use the XO3s, but this one has that extra port. So it has 5 ports, and then that central wiper on it too. The central wiper is really key because if you don't have that on there, these things you can see there's biological growth, stuff like that growing on these, and so we need that wiper on there to help keep the ends of the sensors clean so they're getting good readings and stuff like that. So we actually scrub these off every week when we're here too, just to make sure, try to keep that biological growth at a minimum. But if you don't have those wipers on there, they get messy really fast. Do you
recalibrate it, or do you take them in for calibration at regular intervals?
Yes,
right?
So calibration is roughly every 3 months, 2.5 to 3 months or so when we do that. And so we keep these going year round too, so these are in the building all year long. Some of our sites that we do this similar type work at with the winters here in Ohio, you can't keep these out when it gets really cold. So that's why we like to have them in our buildings here, because we can actually get that winter data and stuff like that too. And then calibration usually takes, pull them all in within a week of each other and get them back out maybe within a week or two. That way we don't have too much downtime and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So this is the NextSense telemetry unit that we use. We use the X2s, and what this does is it records the data from the sensor, and it holds that there, and then every 10 minutes it's sending the data off to the WQ Data Live site, and then that information is shared with Lost Seagull, so that way it's open and available to the public that way. So the seals run our dissolved or soluble reactive phosphorus, our total phosphorus, our total nitrogen, ammonium, and silica. And then the other parameters are ran on ICs, so ion chromatography.
Right, because you have all that. I forgot how much stuff I forgot how much data you guys collect. Yeah.
There's like 13 or 14 parameters per bottle that comes in that gets ran.
How does your information get used? You guys produce so much data and information here. Do you have a sense of how it's used?
So it's used a lot. We try to use as much of it as we can on our own, writing papers, things like that. It's used primarily through Ohio EPA and other like Ohio agencies and stuff like that to help figure out what's going on with the algal bloom as far as how much phosphorus is getting out into the rivers and streams and then ultimately out into the lake, and then figuring out what can be done about setting limits for how much agricultural runoff is allowed to happen, things like that potentially. It's like finding that balance between, we know we need the food production, we all want to be able to eat dinner and stuff like that, but then how can we help them using the science that we have to improve their, phosphorus losses, nutrient losses, stuff like that.
And in a lot of ways, Ohio is kind of at the forefront of that where we are right now. So.
Right.
What does a normal day look like for you? Mondays, you said that you're out getting samples, but is that a normal day, or what is a normal day for you?
Primarily, I'm still out doing field work at least 1 or 2 days a week between all the projects we have going on. We're part of Governor DeWine's H2 Ohio wetland program and stuff too, so we do sampling for that. So we have a lot of different projects that we're working on. And so field work a couple days a week, in the lab doing work too, helping with analysis. If there's issues that come up with instrumentation, I help fix that stuff too. So a lot of different hats that I wear too. So as far as we know, this type of nutrient data set for rivers and streams is really one of a kind globally. There's other places that have somewhat similar, but it's a little bit different, not as long periods of time or less frequent of sampling, that sort of thing, but it's a really unique data set to have.